For far too long, the women's basketball landscape has been dominated by just a few regimes. You know the teams: UConn, South Carolina, Stanford. In the past, you had Tennessee and USC. These teams have sort of been able to put up a monopoly, or the better word would probably be a cartel, around the women's basketball landscape. These teams pretty much get dibs on all of the incoming talent, and it also gives these programs a certain level of power and influence at the next level of pro basketball, with the WNBA and the Olympics. With Caitlin Clark's rise in the public eye, and simultaneously her rise to becoming a basketball powerhouse all unto herself, her mere presence challenged this system as we all knew it, and we all saw the pushback she has received, particularly as it relates to those within the women's basketball community. She represented a threat to the women's basketball hierarchy, and we saw all of the controversy that arose from this, with the hard fouls, the slight comments, the complaining about her fans, etc. I do think some of the criticism of the fans were valid because, in my opinion, it kind of painted Clark as this hopeless victim. But as a fan of basketball, this is what we always said that we wanted, as far as players going at each other, like how they don't do in the NBA anymore. And I feel like Clark has the mental toughness to where she doesn't have to be made a victim, especially as she gets better and better. At the beginning of the WNBA season, I was in agreement because she was a rookie trying to find her footing, but as she started to get better and got close to dominating, I felt like the script could be flipped and she could go from being the hunted into being the hunter, if you will. But I digress. The real thing here is, after taking the Iowa women's basketball team to back-to-back national championship games and just falling short, Caitlin Clark forever changed the landscape and kind of put a dent in history. If you look at all of the past NCAA women's champions, you see the same teams, and then you randomly see Iowa twice in a row. This could be a real watershed moment into taking Iowa into a more respected and serious women's basketball program and help them become a powerhouse. And we kind of have been seeing this already because Iowa has been getting a lot of looks from the top recruits, ending up in their final 10, top 5, or maybe even top 3 teams before they sign somewhere else. They even were able to recruit a 5-star recruit out of California in Addie of Mater Dei. This success has also brought them who this video is about through the transfer portal. They were able to secure a top 3 scorer in the nation with Lucy Olsen. Now, Lucy Olsen is an important figure in this whole scenario in Iowa becoming one of the premier teams in all of women's basketball, because if she can maintain the success of the Iowa team, this will be a proof of concept that Iowa is to be taken seriously from here on out. Obviously, we shouldn't expect her to be Caitlin Clark and have the same level of success, but if she can remain competitive in the Big Ten, and if she can help this team get through the first couple of games in the national tournament and keep Iowa relevant and in the conversation, I think that will be a huge success to the program. Not only that, but if she can improve her draft stock, it shows that Iowa can develop pro talent, and that would be huge for the program. Players like Olsen, Stuelke, and Addie are the key test for this program. So I want to dive into whether or not Lucy Olsen can establish Iowa as a serious threat as a national powerhouse team. After losing the title in the 2023 season, fans of the Iowa's women's basketball team were anxious for Caitlin Clark to get some help. Some of the players that were in the portal were Lexi Donarski of Iowa State, Haley Van Lith of Louisville, and Lauren Betts of Stanford, to name a few. Iowa was not able to pull anyone from the transfer portal, and they lost 2 key contributors to their 2023 turning run in Monica Sedano and McKenna Warnock. There were also no key freshmen coming in, and this ironically contributed to Caitlin Clark having to put together one of the most historic seasons of all time, averaging around 32 points and 8 assists or so. It could be considered one of the greatest carry jobs across all of basketball, regardless of gender. But this was a peek into the influence or lack thereof for Iowa's program, that even with having a generation of talent like Clark, they couldn't recruit players to want to play with her. Even with a player like Juju Watkins, we saw players want to join her after only 1 season when she didn't have nearly the same amount of success as Clark. Only explanation is that Iowa had not yet built up that respect in the women's basketball world to garner that. Fast forward to 2024, and Iowa repeated their appearance to a second national championship game, proving that it wasn't a fluke that they were there And although they lost again, this time we started to see players outside of the program take note of this. Obviously, I discussed them being able to secure Lucy Olsen and Addie deal respectively. And this was huge because it showed that Iowa can be a mainstay, as these are the first dominoes to fall in what can be the start of a huge momentum shifter.
I mean, it was a bunch of things, but I think because I only have 1 year left, I don't have a COVID year, which really stinks. I wish I had one more, but
Yeah.
at this point, and like the women's basketball thriving, like I just wanted to go to a school that really appreciated women's basketball and just go to a bigger school for my last year. I didn't have like an idea when I entered. I was just like, okay, let's enter the portal, let's see what happens. And they were my first call. Coach Bluter called right away. And I mean, it was Coach Bluter. I was like, my hands were sweating. I was so excited. I was freaking out.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just like loved her through the phone. And then my parents, we got on a Zoom call with the rest of the coaches. That went well. I was talking to other coaches in the meantime. And then they were like, all right, let's get you out here. And I was like, okay. So then I just went and visited. I just loved everything about it. And then I committed the next day.
So you talked about your connection with Coach Bluter, but not soon after you committed, she left and Jan Jensen took over. So did that impact you in any way, or it seemed like you were close enough with the rest of the staff to continue with your commitment?
Yeah. I mean, right when she called me, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Because I had no idea. And she like didn't mention it. She like didn't know yet. And then but when she was like, Coach Jay's taking over, I'm like, okay. Like I met her. She was always there when I was with Coach Bluter. So I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but she was always there. I loved her. And then I loved the rest of the coaching staff too. And they were all staying. And then when the whole team was staying too, that like solidified it for me. I'm like, okay, Coach Jay's got to be pretty awesome if the rest of them are staying. If they didn't like her at all, they would leave. So yeah.
Also, after the retirement of Coach Lisa Bluter, it was good to see that players that had committed to play for Iowa were still on board now that power had shifted to Coach Jan Jensen. It takes time for a program to actually become a powerhouse, and it usually starts with a transformative player or a series of transformative players. USC had Cheryl Miller and Cynthia Cooper. Tennessee had Shamik Holzclough and Tamika Catchings and Candace Parker. UConn had Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, Maya Moore, Breonna Stewart, and the list goes on. And South Carolina is a more recent powerhouse with the likes of Asia Wilson and Aaliyah Boston. It's not clear which path Iowa is on, but they certainly have one of the more transformative players of all time. And now that she has gone on to the pros, they have to be able to lure more into that program. So obviously, they were able to bring in Lucy Olsen. And a little on Lucy Olsen, obviously third leading scorer in the nation last season behind Caitlin Clark and Juju Watkins. Lucy is an interesting player. She is a true shot creator, and there's more to her game than meets the eye.
Just like my ball handling, like I'm fine with pressure, like that type of thing. I feel like in high school, we didn't have anyone else that went D1 on my high school team. So I like did a lot.
You carried the team. I got you.
Most of us did, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think just like ball handling, because Villanova didn't really have a true point guard, like that type of thing. So I think that's what I came in as, and then just my hustle. But a lot of people have a motor, so I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people have a motor, but I feel like when you play, you're like, you're there, you're on the ground, you're running, you're like, your motor is like pedal to the metal for 40 minutes. And so I feel like that's different, where a lot of people, their motor is just like, okay, like I can go fast the whole game, I can run with pace, but like when you're doing it while continuously taking charges, diving on the ground, like I bet your jersey is soaked after games. Like dang, I see you working the whole time.
There isn't much about Lucy's background growing up, at least yet, but what we do know is she hails from Pennsylvania. We've seen her make an appearance in Olympic basketball as a 3-on-3 player, and she was even able to participate at the WNBA All-Star game for their tune-up game. And she grew up a tennis player, and I'm a big fan of cross-sport athletes because a lot of those skills translates on the basketball court, and I believe with Lucy, it translates with her agility and fluidity out on the court. This play exemplifies how crafty and underrated of a finisher she truly is, and also gives a glimpse into her underrated agility with this quick cross into the lefty lay. Along the same lines as the previous play, you see her hit the right to left cross, but on this one, we go into a more complex component of her game, which is her mid-range game. And on this play, she gets into the teeth of the defense and rises up for the short mid-range jumper, which is a cheat code for a player to have in their game because defenders are thinking they can meet you at the rim. But also we see her operate out of the pick and roll and show that she can extend the range a bit on the mid-range, hitting the shot at the left elbow area. She can also create out of this because although she missed the shot, she still got a good bit of separation on it and created a good look for herself. And like I said, right here, this shows the value of her short mid-range shot because now backline defenders have to play her super close and play up on her in that area, and she is able to counter that by doing a step through with no resistance at the backline. To go more into Lucy Olsen's game, she is basically a 5'10 combo guard, and Iowa this season has been using her as the lead guard, although they don't have her just setting up the entire offense like Caitlin Clark would have been, but instead they allow her to bring the ball up before the ball gets swung around to initiate the offense. Here, after she drives baseline, you can see her spot the open player for the kick out, and that is going to be huge as an off-ball and on-ball creating guard. As I mentioned, she is a shot creator, and the types of shots she is able to get off from the mid-range is a thing of beauty. Here, she uses that mid-range attention and gravity to find Hannah Stuelke, but Hannah misses it as her left hand isn't her strong hand. On this play, we see the Iowa offense go to work with a lot of ball movement and player movement. Lucy makes the advanced pass and cuts through in order to set a screen before she pops off her own screen, and then she gets the ball screen and sets it up well with a nice float hezzy. Draws two and passes to Hannah Stuelke, who misses it again, unfortunately. And in the open court, she makes a great look-away pass, showing that she is a willing extra passer when she doesn't have to worry about the creation component. On the defensive side of the ball, she is pretty underrated. You can tell that Coach Jan Jensen is really prioritizing ball movement and team defense. This team will have the most team-friendly playstyle that we've seen out of an Iowa team in a while. Her point of attack is pretty impressive, being able to utilize her hip mobility to rotate and stay attached to the ball handler without giving up much. Here's another example of her staying attached even with her having to get through a screen. The player she is guarding ends up scoring, but her still being there attached should be noted. She gambles here and still is able to recover and force the pass. Here's another example of her off-ball and screen defense, being able to blow up this handoff action with her screen navigation and her quick hands. Here she shows a great navigation, but the one knock you can use against her is that she is slight, so this bump really knocks her back, creating the opening for the ball handler to score. For this team to get to reach the levels we are hoping for as a program, Lucy Olsen and even Hannah Stuelke will have to improve in some key areas to where they can be the stabilizing forces that this Iowa team needs in order to have some type of resilience when they start to get into conference play and start to play some of the better teams in the nation.
I feel like there's a difference in playing style between the two conferences.
Yeah, the Big East was definitely slower. The Big Ten just runs, like run and gun. I'm like, I need to get in better shape for this.
Oh my God. Yeah, I feel like the Big Ten, they really be moving, especially Iowa. Like Stuelke runs the floor so well. And so specifically with the two of you, her kind of being the anchor down low for last year's team, as she will be again, how have you guys really been working on your connection to be that pick and roll 1-2 punch, hitting her on the move like she likes to be? What have you guys been doing specifically, and how is that, chemistry coming together?
Yeah, she was out for a little bit, so she's coming back now, and just playing with each other, like in practice, or if we stay after for a bit. We live together, so that helps build some chemistry off the court. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I think pick and rolls. That's a big part of the game nowadays, especially. It's always been in men's basketball, but now I feel like women's is really growing on that. But pick and rolls for sure, trying to get that pocket pass. Now that I'm playing with Hannah Stuelke, I got to find her. But yeah, I would say that's the main thing I've been working on.
Olsen and Stuelke in particular are starting to develop some pretty good chemistry, something Clark was able to establish with Stuelke this past season. Hannah has really gotten comfortable attacking from the perimeter, going to her right. If her and Lucy can connect on more plays like this, they can establish themselves as a tandem to be reckoned with. Wrapping it up, Iowa has all of the potential in the world, but they just have to capitalize on it while the iron is hot, because if not, they can lose momentum and it can be a situation where Iowa is just a blip in history, kind of like with Atlanta Deladon in Delaware or Larry Bird in Indiana State, where it's just a phenomenon instead of a movement. Iowa has played a few games away from Carver Hawkeye Arena, and there has been some good fan turnout with the crowds they're bringing, having been a great blend of opposing fans and Iowa fans going back and forth at the arena, making it a charged up environment. It's great to see this type of fan retention post Caitlin Clark, because that shows the excitement and investment is still there for the team. Addison O'Grady has been playing extremely well in the midst of all of this, as her confidence has arisen and she has more responsibility in the offense. This bodes well for Iowa to help them get to the point that they need to get to establish themselves as a serious program. Having players that can relieve Olsen and Stuelke will make this team way harder to beat, especially with freshmen they brought in with Tegan Mullaney and Taylor Strimlow, who are full of confidence already. And they are going to be good for the program for years to come. So this program has a good foundation to build off of, with pros like Megan Gustafson, Kate Martin, and of course Caitlin Clark in the pros. They are starting to develop that respect as a program. Having numbers like that builds the influence of the program to where it can prevent the behaviors that were charged against Caitlin in her rookie campaign, because there would have been a lot more people in her corner that could defend her and deter that energy. Also, having all of these pros offers the future players that commit to the program great resources, which in turn benefits the program by making it more attractive. Iowa has one shot at getting this right, and Lucy Olsen is right at the center of all of it. So that does it for this video, guys. Let me hear your thoughts on this topic. What will it take for the Iowa women's basketball team to become a true powerhouse team? Also, hit that like and share button. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because I will be following this closely and keeping up with the progress of this Iowa team and how it impacts the larger women's basketball world. So tap in. You're not going to want to miss it. With that said, peace.